Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. I'm here to brief the Council on my report on the situation of human rights in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela during the year from 1 May 2024. I am concerned that the human rights situation in Venezuela deteriorated during this period. People were subjected to arbitrary detentions, violations of due process and enforced disappearances amid continued allegations of torture and ill treatment. I will focus my remarks on developments since my office last updated the Council. In the run-up to parliamentary and regional elections a month ago, the authorities announced the detention of some 70 people, including opposition figures, human rights defenders, and 17 foreigners on accusations of belonging to a terrorist group. After the parliamentary elections, the authorities said they had dismantled a terrorist network involving some of those previously detained, together with several human rights and humanitarian organizations. I repeat that Venezuela's terrorism legislation and its application are contrary to international standards and law. Most people detained under terrorism-related offenses are subjected to judicial proceedings that do not comply with international standards. Many people also remain in detention after being arrested in connection with the presidential elections in July 2024. I note that the authorities have conditionally released at least 1,500 people. During the reporting period, my office documented 32 people who were subjected to torture and ill treatment in detention. 15 of these were adolescents. Some 28 people were subjected to enforced disappearance after the presidential elections, and their whereabouts remain unknown. At least 12 of these are foreign nationals who do not have access to consular assistance. I'm very concerned by detention conditions, including people being denied access to medical care and lacking access to food and water. Some prisoners were subjected to incommunicado detention after publicly calling for improvements in their detention conditions. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, I'm also very concerned about freedom of association and specifically the NGO law approved last November, and I had a chance myself to discuss it many times, explaining that we have serious issues with its tenets. Many organizations have reported problems in relation to the registration process, including unlawful requests for fees and an insistence on requirements that are not included in the law. Several NGOs have felt compelled to end their operations in Venezuela because of legal obstacles. That's precisely the concerns that we have had before. My report also notes violations of the right of individuals belonging to various groups to participate in public affairs. Women continue to be underrepresented in public life. My report highlights continued challenges for victims of gender-based discrimination and violence, including femicide, and towards access to justice. Access to abortion continues to be criminalized, even in cases of rape, incest, or fetal impairment. I regret the lack of progress on the rights of LGBTIQ+ people who are targeted by hate speech and hate crimes. And when these crimes take place, LGBTIQ+ people rarely have access to justice and may be subjected to discrimination and violence in detention. Meanwhile, difficult economic conditions have been exacerbated by the termination of operations by the major oil corporation Chevron. Venezuelans are already feeling the impact, such as, for example, through hyperinflation. The authorities' ability to fund essential public services is severely limited. For example, almost half of all students attended school irregularly in 2024, due partly to an absence of teachers and the suspension of classes. People also continue to report a lack of essential medications and equipment in public healthcare facilities. An estimated 91% of hospitals surveyed between January and July 2024 asked patients to bring their own supplies for surgery. The monthly salary remains unchanged since March 2022 at 130 bolivares, which is under $1 and about half the price of a carton of eggs. The drastic reduction in funding from key international donors and the imposition of sectoral sanctions are also contributing to the deteriorating humanitarian situation. Mr. President, while it is beyond the scope of my report, I am aware that many Venezuelans are also suffering because of uncertainty about the fate of loved ones who have been deported from the United States. I repeat my call on the US government to ensure compliance with due process, to implement the verdicts of its courts, to safeguard the rights of children, and to stop the removal of any person to any country where there is a risk of irreparable harm. In light of the continued challenges to human rights in Venezuela, I urge the immediate and unconditional release of all those arbitrarily detained, including human rights defenders Rocio San Miguel, Javier Tarazona, Carlos Julio Rojas, and Eduardo Torres. I call for an immediate end to enforced disappearances and incommunicado detentions, and for foreign citizens in detention to be granted consular assistance. I urge the repeal of legislation that contributes to restricting civic and democratic space. And I repeat my call for the lifting of broad sectoral sanctions that restrict key health services, access to food, and have a disproportionate impact on the most vulnerable. Mr. President, as you all well know, I believe in engagement and I'm committed to do so. But I do hope the authorities will fulfill the necessary conditions to ensure the full return of all my staff and the implementation of my mandate. Thank you.